Welcome to part 2 of the Ryobi Router Table series. In this video, we'll cover the assembly of the accessory table, installation of a fixed base router, and then how to level it once it's in the table. As we go, I'll show snippets from the owner's manual on screen. It's a lot of info, so if you have to pause the video to read it, go ahead. Are you ready? Let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do once we get this out of the box, turn the table over. We're going to find the side that has the 7 holes here. This side is the front, and the side with the slots back here are for the fence. That's the back. The front side is where our power box mount. We got to get that put together. So let's do that. So we got this rail. Find the angle support for the power box, and we're going to take the power box and mount it to these 3 holes. So I'm kind of just holding the nut on the back and tightening by hand here with a little stubby, and that's pretty solid. So we're good to go. So we're going to line it up with the 7 holes on the table. We're going to use 2 on this side and 2 on this side. Alright, now that those guys are in place, we can move to the legs. I got all 4 legs, power box in place, the deflector in place. We're ready to flip this thing over. So these pilot holes for the different manufacturers for the height adjustment tool that can be used to adjust the height from above without having to reach underneath the table. This router and the router table did not come with it, so you have to provide your own. In the comments, a fella actually put in there that Ryobi and Rigid use the same height adjustment tool. Thank you for putting that comment down there and helping everybody else out. I haven't ever needed to use the tool to adjust the height, so I've never drilled any of these holes out. Use an appropriate size bit for whatever your height adjustment tool is if you have one. Next step is to actually grab our router and to put the plate on the router. So we're going to set the table aside and we'll work with the router and the base plate next. To prepare this for mounting in the router table, what we do is, according to the instructions, it says to remove the base plate of the router. So to do that, we're going to get a Phillips head screwdriver and pop these guys loose. Now this was a step that I missed in the original assembly, and Jeff in the comment section pointed out that I had left it on, and his comment about adjustment, the height adjustment, it might be off a little bit. Thank you, Jeff, for commenting and letting me know that I needed to take this off. So once you get that off, I am going to, because I have it apart, I'm going to vacuum that out. Don't suck those up. Alright, so now that we've got that cleaned up, the plate removed from the bottom, we're going to take that and put that back in our bag. That's going to hang out with the different throat rings from the table. Keep those all together. And these fasteners, we need some place to keep them safe too, so they're going back in the bag as well. We're not going to need those when mounting this to our router table. So now we've prepared the router for assembly onto the router table. We've already removed the base plate off of it as the instructions outline, and we're going to take and put the adapter plate to the table onto our router. The router plate itself has a little notch in it. I don't know if you can see there. There's a notch in the router adapter plate, and this notch goes away from you. So the notch goes away from you. It actually calls out which hole and the type of fastener for each model of router. This router is a R163. In the instruction manual, you'll notice that it calls out to use B1, B2, and B4. So those are the holes in the pattern that we're going to use to mount that guy. And for the Ryobi Router 163, it uses these large ones. So we're going to drop those in B1, B2, and B4. Started by hand, just so we don't cross-thread them. And then we're going to get Stubby here to help us. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and hit it with this to give us a nice torqued connection there. So that's it. Now the router is mounted in the adapter plate. From here we'll take this and drop it back into the table, and then we'll adjust the trim and flatness of the adapter plate. Alright, so now we got the router. We're going to feed the power cable down through the hole, and we're going to double check our adapter plate to make sure the notch is towards the back of the table, away from us. And we're going to lower this guy down into place, just like that. So you take Stubby, and we'll go ahead and just make sure that the fasteners are screwed into those inserts. Now we don't want to crank it down because we're not there yet. So we're going to leave it loose. Like in the instructions, we're going to use this ruler and we're going to go across the table to ensure that it's flat and it's level. So whenever you feed a material through across it, it doesn't get hung up on the edge of this insert. It doesn't drop from the plane of the table across it, and or get caught as it goes across, leaving the insert plate this way, because it could get hung up here. In fact, there's a couple places where the surface of the table has actually hit it before. Right here, the surface has been flaked up and away from it not being adjusted appropriately. And that happens if you've adjusted it, or you keep adjusting it for sawdust getting underneath this plate as time goes on, and then you clean it and just drop the plate back in it and don't reset it, the plate will be dropped below the surface over here and it'll hang up as you feed. So that's a little bit frustrating, and I've definitely had to deal with it. So now we've got the insert plate put into the table, we're ready to adjust it using a hex key. So we want this to be one seamless surface as we push our material into the tool. So we're going to bring our straight edge across, and there's a little bit of light coming in under that, which means that the adapter plate's lower than the table. So we're going to raise this up by turning it to the right. So on this side, we'll notice that it's a little bit higher, so all we have to do is back out the fastener and it will lower. So now we can move, I'm going to pull this fastener out so it's not getting in our way. So if we move this across. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. That height adjustment is great. So we'll go ahead and drop the fastener down in here. So that's the adjustment process from right to left feed. But what happens if it's not right front to back? So we follow the same process that we did for the left to right. We increase the height by rotating to the right. We decrease by rotating to the left. So the front of this was a little high, and I can feel it by my hand. A little bit of light so we can pick this up. And actually it's neat because I can actually lift the straight edge off the table by tightening too far. So in order to make sure it's right, I'm going to back it out and lower the straight edge back onto the table, and when it meets, I know I'm flush. So we can do the same for the back side here. And it's a little bit low. We're going to turn it up. The straight edge comes off the table, and we're going to back it down until the straight edge touches the table again. And that's it. Well, that's nice. So once we get that level, then we're able to take stubby here and we just secure this plate in place, because we don't want to crank down, we don't want to torque it too tight, because if you do, it will warp all of the tuning that we've done. So we just get it down to where it's tight. So now that we've got the adapter plate installed with the router on it and everything level, we're going to go ahead and grab the fence and install that on the table now. Alright, so this is the fence, and it mounts on top of the table using the bolts that go through the table and allow us to tighten and loosen it and then adjust its location out depending upon the material that we're going to be feeding through it. The fence uses these fasteners to hold it into place, and to do that we take this fastener, and one of these washers has a square cut out in it for the head. This gets pushed up from the bottom up. Right over here. Through. And you can just push that carriage bolt head right up into the groove and hold it with your finger from the bottom. And you take a washer and drop on that, and then the knob, tightener knob, and screw that into place. I'm going to do that the same thing for the other side. The knob. Now that's it. That's all you got to do to mount the fence in place. The fence just slide all the way to the back, about 4.5 inches back. It can come all the way forward. So it can come all the way forward to about, 3/4 inches forward of zero. About that far. So that's the range of motion for the fence. Now the fence has a dust shield. So this goes over top of your workpiece that's being fed through, and the dust that's generated, hopefully if you have a vacuum attached to it, is getting sucked out the back and keeping it nice and clean. So, okay, the next thing we'll look at is the miter gauge. The miter gauge snaps into here and allows you to adjust the angle of the material and hold it as you slide it through the tool. So it allows you to pick your angle that you want and apply it and run it through. So supplied with the router table, you get these throat rings that drop into your insert plate. Now these throat rings are designed to be used with the different size router bits that you're putting to use. So like this one is too small for this roundover, so probably need something this size. That's a little bit better. Now what that does is allows the material to ride and be supported by the table longer until it comes in contact with the tool. That might help with chatter and reduce splitting. So using an appropriate sized throat with the right sized bit is probably the best quality-wise to use. So the throat's larger than the diameter of the tool, and even with a little bit of wobble in case there's some deflection. You don't want it to reach out and grab the edge of your throat ring and destroy it. So, now the throat rings have a tab, a little notch tab sticking out that corresponds with the notch in the base plate. That helps you line this throat plate up and push it into place. So what I found is you really got to whack on it to get that guy in there. The next piece to add is the feather board. Now this feather board mounts on this rail on the fence. And then you just tighten these up to hold it into place. So, okay, depending upon the size of material that you're using, you can adjust the feather board up and down to hold that material. So if we had something thin, we just insert it, press it down, tighten it up. The feather board here helps to keep and resist the kickback. So we can easily push the material this way, but it wants to resist going back. So we can feed just like that. What if we have a different size material? Adjust it to use the next size material. So that's what the feather board's for. It'll help reduce chatter and maybe increase the quality of the work.
Stay tuned for part 3 of this series, where we focus on all the router specific stuff, like installing a bit, adjusting the height, connecting it to the power box, using it with an accessory like a shop vac, setting up the fence for a simple round over bit. We'll also feed a few boards through it to get to see it in action. Then we'll walk through the steps to take it back to a freehand router. Thanks for watching. This video was really challenging but super fun to do. So if this was helpful in any way, please let me know by giving me a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, go ahead and subscribe.